Greetings, students. My name is Dr. Janelle Anderson. Welcome to our class. Before we get into the class, though, I wanted to take a minute, introduce myself to you, give you an opportunity to hear my voice and hear me welcome you to this course. I'm in the middle of setting up my office. I'll give you a little bit of a tour. It's a little bit messy. Look at that. It looks like some of the classrooms that some people in this cohort are teaching in right now. I have a nice little window there. But over the course of the semester, you will likely see this background plenty of times while we are teaching together. So I'll be sure to start gathering together and putting some beautiful things up there for us to enjoy while we're on Zoom calls, because there will be a lot of opportunity for us, not just during this course, but hopefully through many courses that you'll take with me during your doctoral journey, for us to meet, talk, share ideas, brainstorm, and all kinds of things. So a little bit about me is, if you've read my bio that I put on the Canvas page, some of this will sound familiar. But I am a former teacher. So I come to the work of a professor having actually spent my whole first part of my life, my first career, as a high school social studies teacher. So I taught high school social studies, actually got my teaching certification here at UWGB. I completed my undergrad at the University of Minnesota in history in 1997, so you can do that math. And I thought, 1997, what was somebody in 1997 going to do with a degree in history, right? The job market was kind of tight. And I had sort of always considered being a teacher, but it was sort of in that period when I really decided I was going to leave Minneapolis, come back to Wisconsin, and come back to Northeast Wisconsin, which is a region that was home to me. I came back to Northeast Wisconsin, chose the certification courses here at UW Green Bay, and then from there moved down to the Dane County, Columbia County area. I lived in Lodi, Wisconsin for, around 25 years. I lived in Lodi, Wisconsin, 22 years, something like that. So that part of the state kind of became my home, and now here I am back here. But I am actually originally from this part of the state. In 7th grade, moved from Western Iowa in a town called Carroll to, my dad had a job transfer that took us to Northeast Wisconsin. But my entire family on my mom and dad's side are both from Northeast Wisconsin. So for them, it was a joyous homecoming to be back here. My dad's an Oconomowoc. My mom is from Marinette. My dad's entire family is from the mountain area. So if you're familiar with those places, then you know the people from which I come. So back here now, after 20 years in the field, what made me leave, right? Teachers are leaving, a lot of people are in transition, and I left for reasons that were tied to some of the concerns that I study as a researcher. So I really felt like, and maybe some of you feel like this too, like that there are these burning questions, these things that I can't really understand why this is happening or why things aren't working. And for me, after 20 years as a teacher, I was looking around and thinking, why am I not more successful? What are the things that are happening around me that are limiting my ability to actually reach students and actually give them what they need? Because I knew what they needed, right? I was a 20-year professional. I was at the top of my game. And so I was really fortunate that I was able to get a position at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in their Educational Leadership and Policy Department. While I was there, my advisor was a woman named Carolyn Kelly, an incredible scholar. I would encourage you to look up some of her work. But I was introduced to this world of academia, academic research, and in particular educational research, leadership, and policy. And I found such a joy in digging deeply into these questions. And so I hope you are also finding some space and time and joy in the deep questions that are involved in doctoral studies, because that for me was a transformation in the way that I thought about the role that I could play in my field. I didn't want to just be someone in the field who was struggling and complaining and frustrated. I really wanted to have a seat at the table, and I knew that a doctoral degree would at least give me a certain kind of credibility with some people. And I also wanted to better understand. I wanted to describe this. And as somebody who is a practitioner who had worked in the field, I also wanted to be able to write for teachers and say, here is what teachers might be experiencing. Here are the things I have learned from the research that I've done. So the work that I actually do is about teachers' labor. And I will probably bore you guys to death with all of my insights and information about teachers' labor. But basically, what I look at is what are the forces within teachers' work that is making it so hard for teachers to do their work. And I use a theorist named Nell Noddings, who's a very famous educational philosopher. And what I do is I critique her work. Nell Noddings brought into the field a feminist philosophy called care theory. And care is a word that you guys are familiar with, you've heard of. But in academia, and especially in educational philosophy, care is a cohesive theory and philosophical approach to how schools should work. And it uses a feminist construction that came out of work that feminists were doing in psychology in the 1970s. And what prior to that time, what all kinds of philosophy and like theorists were doing was using Kant, this thinker who really positioned right and wrong as being black and white, and saying that, you're sort of either doing it right or you're doing it wrong. It's either good or it's bad. Sort of a rational approach is what Kant was really bringing to the world. And what feminists in the 1970s started saying, a feminist, particularly Carol Gillian, was the first framer of care theory, is what they said was that, Kant didn't have it all right, that there are these other ways to know things, there are other ways to decide, and we should make decisions about people and people's lives based on the whole person. What's going on in their life? What are the challenges that they face? What are the concerns in the community that they are struggling with? And also, what are the other conditions that might be more humane and caring for us to consider when we're making a decision? So often when I explain this to people, what I tell them is that for a teacher, from a teacher's perspective, care theory would say if a student is sleeping on your desk, instead of saying that student is breaking a rule because they're not allowed to sleep on their desks, so that student needs a discipline referral, what care theory would say is, let's find out why that student's sleeping on that desk. Maybe that student's mom works until 3 a.m. And so that student stays up and puts all their siblings to bed and then waits up for their mom to come home so that they can have a conversation with their mom before they go back to bed, getting just a couple of hours of sleep before they come to their 9th grade class. So what a caring teacher would do was inquire about that, right? So what I look at is the way that theory of care has impacted what is expected of teachers in their work. And the critique that I bring to it is that I think what we have a society that wants schools to be caring, right? We want teachers and communities and hospitals and doctors and social workers. We want care. We want people to be seen in these really holistic ways. It's important, right? The critique I bring is that in order for us to have employment or workspaces where adults are providing care, so in a doctor's office, right? If a doctor is going to be caring in that appointment, they have to have the conditions, right? They have to have the time necessary to do it. They have to be empowered to do it. They also have to be trained on how to do it, right? And my critique is that teachers are called to do all this caring work, and that when Nell Noddings brought Gillian's care theory into education and said, yes, we too must care, what we did not do is say, so if we want teachers to be caring in these ways, how would we design their day? How would we change schools? How would we change teachers' work? So that's where I sit, in a world where I use this theory to sort of say, here is what the theoretical framework I use is, but then I'm also a critical theorist. So I say, what are the structural issues that are actually making this problematic? And in particular oppressive. And then I write about and gather data on those problems and the questions that I have around that. So that is a pretty lengthy description of like how I use theory, how I ask questions, and the root of it is how it was all really deeply embedded in my professional practice. The wisdom that I bring to that question is about my experience. And every single one of you in this cohort is bringing experience and wisdom to the questions that you're going to ask as a doctoral student. So I'm excited to learn from you. One of the first things I'm going to ask you to do is set up a time to meet with me. And most of you do not have theoretical frameworks yet. You don't know exactly what you're going to ask maybe. But what I would love for you to do is come with, what are the big questions? What is bringing you into this doctoral work, right? Why would you choose to get a doctorate as a working professional? And what are the things that you are most excited about, things that you're most worried about? I'm very excited to talk through all that stuff with you. So that's what I got my PhD in at the University of Wisconsin in Madison in the Educational Leadership and Policy Department. So that was my journey. But then after I finished my dissertation, I packed up my life and my partner came with me, and we went to Spokane, Washington. And Spokane, Washington is gorgeous. If you've never been to Eastern Washington, everybody in Seattle thinks Spokane is just a rink-dink town, but anybody who knows Spokane knows it's amazing. So if you love the mountains, I would encourage you to go visit Spokane sometime. But the other amazing thing about Spokane is it is a college town, has lots of universities, and one of the universities in Spokane is a small liberal arts college. It is a Jesuit institution, so it is a Catholic school, but it's called, and some of you may already know, because if you know college basketball, you might know that I'm talking about Gonzaga University. So I actually taught at Gonzaga University in their EDD program for the first 2 years of my postdoctorate work. And this, I am starting my 3rd year. So I spent 2 years in Spokane, and then the call of the Midwest and Green Bay was in my ear. And I looked at my partner and I said, "Can you move one more time? Would you move with me one more time?" And he's pretty remarkable. And he said, "Yeah, let's do it." So we came back, and we are really excited to be here. I hope that you take time to complete the survey I sent out, sign up for a time to meet with me, and also know that this is a hard journey. Being a doctoral student is not for the faint of heart, but every single one of you has an incredible opportunity to thrive and survive. I have another video that I'm going to share with you guys, which is sort of about like, what does it mean to be a doctoral student? What do I know based on my experience as not just a student, but also as somebody who has been an instructor of doctoral students for the last several years. And I am looking forward to kind of giving you some of my insights, which will then also, I think, not just help you potentially manage your workload and your expectations, but also I think it might give you a little insight into me, into my instructional style and expectations. So I encourage you to watch that as well. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to tell you. I mean, this is a welcome video, right? So I will tell you that here are a couple little things about me that like help explain my personality. First of all, I'm the youngest daughter of 3. So, sometimes I have a little bit of a like, I'll do it my way kind of thing with 2 older sisters who kind of always tried to do it their way. Not always very successfully because I was pretty strong. But yeah, so the youngest of 3 very close-knit sisters, also really glad to be back a little closer to them. Nieces and nephews who I adore and whose lives are an inspiration to me. I didn't have my own children, so to be able to be sort of a co-parent with my sisters and brother-in-laws in raising these incredible human beings has been one of the greatest gifts of my life, and it's way easier to be the cool aunt than to be the mom, so I got that benefit too, but they're pretty wonderful, so you'll probably hear me mentioning them. They're all adults now, so I have lots of great stories about their like exciting, beautiful lives as most of them public servants, so it's pretty great. And then, I have to tell you, I am of course, my family is from Northeast Wisconsin, so you should not be surprised to know that my family is filled with Packer fans, with one exception. And that is my poor husband, who is a Bears fan. He is from Sycamore, Illinois, and he is just the most dedicated Bears fan. I applaud him. But he also has lived in this part of Wisconsin for most of his life. In fact, he used to run and be a DJ on WAPL. So if you ever listen to a local radio station around here, for the people who are in the Northeast Wisconsin area, if you listen to WAPL at any time over the last 20 years or so, it is very likely that Ryan touched your life in some way. He may have selected some music that you were going to listen to, so that's pretty fun. He doesn't work for WAPL anymore. Like I said, we sort of made the transition, so he's moved on to another field, but we're both really deeply rooted in this part of the country, and so excited to be working with you as your professor in your EDD program. Reach out, ask me questions. If something's making you anxious, you're not alone. We all have anxiety. We all are struggling at, one time or another, and yours just might be your day or your week when you need a little extra help. So if you want just a pep talk, I said I'm like the cool aunt. Do you know what cool aunts do better than anything? This is my whole life with young adult nieces and nephews, is it's all about the pep talk. So I've got it practiced. So I am great at pep talks, but I also love to brainstorm. So if you need someone just as a thought partner, please reach out. Okay, I'm looking at the clock. This is a long video. Thank you for listening. I look forward to meeting you all soon.